Hey everyone, welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. Dr. Michelina AF, hashtag that felon doctor, coming to you talking about mentalities. God, do we waste so much of our mental energy, our thought energy on things that don't matter, right? We also have a lot of mental blocks that we do not realize we have and we function out of, right? We're talking about 6 here. Today we're going to be talking about one of them, Invincibility Mentality. But if you missed yesterday's, go back. I overview them. Check the caption out. Overview them there. So today we're going to talk about invincibility. By the way, guys, I have had all these mentalities, and some of them I still do need to work on. So yeah, these mentalities are, I know them intimately because I functioned out of them for a very long time. So invincibility mentality, hyper independence. Everybody knows now it's trauma response. If you follow me, you know that that means that you had some kind of adversity in your life. Let's say you had needs that weren't met. That's adversity. And that could have happened to you at 6 years old. That could have happened to you at 2 years old. Like, you might not realize needs that have not been met or actualized. And so if you were neglected as a child, if you were abused as a child, like, you have needs that weren't met. And so we have adversity. We experience some things that were adverse. They were not what we wanted. They were misfortunate. They were not what we expected, right? Maybe an example, you had a caregiver who didn't give you the care you needed. They did the best they could with what they had, maybe, or they did not the greatest. Okay, fine. So you have adversity. Maybe if you're a child, you internalize that. Like, oh, I guess I don't deserve this thing. Oh, I guess I'm not worthy of this thing, right? Now you internalize it. Now we have trauma. So what do we do a lot of times? Oh, we grow up and it's like, I'm going to make sure I get this thing. I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to take care of this thing. I've got this. I'm going to make it happen, right? And now we fill up the ego because we couldn't depend on anybody else, right? We couldn't depend on a caretaker. We couldn't depend on whomever. So what do we have to do? We've got to make it happen, right? Now, if you're a Christian, I, the Lord, will make it happen. So already you're in idolatry to yourself. This is just for the Christians real quick. If you are not a Christian, hey, that's fine. You still want to be careful of being idolatrous to yourself because you're not that fucking powerful. You're just not. We are interdependent creatures. We are communal creatures. So if you're functioning out of an independent, invincible mentality, you are functioning out of a false premise, okay? You are functioning out of a false premise. There's virtually no way for you to be independent. Let me tell you why. Do you live in a house that somebody else gave you? You're like, no. If you didn't build that thing from the ground up with your own hands by yourself, yes, you are. The bank gave it to you, or your parents gave it to you, or someone else gave it to you, or somebody gave it to you. Do you make your own food? No, probably not. Depend on the people in the supermarket who depend on the people who are farmers who are, okay, interdependent community. You see my point. You can literally do this with anything at any time. How about the electric goes out of your house? You depend on the electric company. Schools, I mean, we watched that happen during COVID. We got really aware in COVID of how interdependent we really are. One little tiny germ, and this again, for the Christians, God will use the small things to confound the big things, the foolish things to confound the wise. Just for the Christians. But yes, we see how interdependent we are. So if you're functioning out of an independent, invincible mentality, you're setting yourself up to fail. You're not invincible, unfortunately. I wish you were, but you're not. And so if you are functioning out of an invincibility mentality, you are A, functioning out of a flawed mentality, and B, you're setting yourself up to be hyper independent in a way that doesn't serve you, in a way that's going to feed your ego, in a way that is not going to help you work in partnership with people to actually go further. If you've studied maybe you haven't. I have done a lot of study on teamwork and leadership, obviously, my doctorate in that. And teams can build things faster and more effectively. They just can, they just do, right? So it's why if you're building a house by yourself versus there's 100 of you building a house, which one's gonna get done faster? right? So if you actually ever want to scale, if you ever want to be productive, if you ever want to go further, faster, farther, you need a team. You need to be a team player. And so invincibility mentality will get you nowhere fast. It's also a trauma response. It's also something that doesn't serve you. In my own life, got me into a lot of trouble because I didn't know how to ask for help, right? That's one of the symptoms of invincibility mentalities. You don't ask for help because you don't acknowledge that you need it. Unfortunately, everybody needs help at some point in their life. Everybody needs help because we're honestly relatively helpless. We don't like to think about that until something happens where we're helpless and we're like, oh, this is awful. I feel out of control and I feel like I can't do anything. Get comfortable with that feeling. A lot of times you are out of control and a lot of times you can't do anything, right? And so when you have an invincibility mentality, it's like that kind of moment will break you. So it doesn't serve you to have that. Instead, you're like, okay, let me get comfortable asking for help, which again can be really, really, for me, it was very, very tricky, very, very, very tricky. Until I realized, like, if my mom didn't take me in after everything that happened with my crime, I would literally be homeless on the street. Literally homeless on the street. I was like, if it was up to the system right now, I would be homeless on the street. And I was like, thank God my mom has always been super supportive, and no matter what, she'll find a way to help me. Like, thank God I have her. There are people who don't have anybody like that. And of course, when you don't have that, you want to be that for yourself. But it's not realistic. It's not realistic. And so it's got to be a balance, because you don't want to be codependent. We'll talk about that. That's the flip side of this mentality, right? Invincibility and hyper independence, one side of it. Codependent is the other side of it. Neither of them serve you. You want to find the balance of interdependent. I have my own self and I'm aware of it, but I'm also aware of how I function in teamwork and partnership. This is why I always think it's best to grow and transform from the inside out. Come home to yourself first. Once you know yourself really well, when you get in partnership, you can understand what you do and don't bring to the table. And then from partnership, you can go into the society community at large. That's what I think is the most productive way of showing up. But again, that's not fair or true for everybody, but I have found that to be very true for myself. And my life kind of allowed me to experiment in that way. So the school that we're building is going to allow for that as well. So I just think it's the best way of being. But anyway, so if you want to start that process, if you want to start 10xing, if you want to start rooting out mentalities and things like that, then go to acornsandoaks.bhx.tv, and you will want to find the course that talks about, actually either course would work, but you're going to want to find the $9.99 course, because that one is the base level course, and that'll help you ferret out mentalities, and it'll help you start transforming your life. Completely Fact is what it's called. And so, yes, you're going to want to check that out. But with all that being said, hope that is informative and helpful to you about mentalities that you may or may not be functioning out of. And like I said, I've done it. I still have to be mindful. Asking for help is still like a really crusty thing I don't like to do, but I know it's the smart thing to do. So it just takes time and effort and work. I always say, if it took you 20 years to like get a thing going, it's going to take you at least 10 to like come out of it, right? So give yourself time, give yourself grace. But if you like what we're doing here, like, comment, hit the bell, subscribe, tell your friends, leave comments, and then I will be here with mentality discussion for the rest of the week. And I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, because it is Thanksgiving time, and in the US anyway. And I will see you guys next time.